So I was mucking around in the pond today. Um, I set my alarm, put my phone in my pocket and set my alarm for how much time I think I have. Then I proceed to pay no attention to the alarm because all wet and muddy and don't want to touch the phone. The neighbor came over and said, "What is that noise?" It's my chimes ringing in my pocket, and they've been ringing for, about 20 minutes now. I wish it was warmer out. It'd be a lot more fun to play in the pond if it was warmer out. Stephen is at a hockey game again, a 11, 12-year-old hockey game, and will not be here tonight. He was going to miss the hockey game, but it's the first game of the tournament, and he's just very, very into this whole hockey thing right now. The house uh, rocks to hockey, really does. American smoke tree leafing out. Get shades of get preview of fall in the spring colors coming out. Everything's leafing out at the same time. Everything's flowering at the same time. I've seen red buds and crab apples blooming at the same time together, but not quince and red buds and crab apples. And I don't think that Mother Nature wanted to have them blooming together. They're just the biggest clash of colors that I can imagine. But I love watching the leaf color come out. Noticing a lot of fruit set on maples. I am. Some of these maples, if you look at them, you think they're coming out in color and realize it's all just the keys. They're just loaded with keys, pink keys or orangey colored keys. The box elders with their brown keys. Um, Watching for Margaret. Hey, Carol. Carol, were we talking about the Collinsonia that you have no, I guess maybe that was Chris. I have Collinsonia has seeded itself, and it's a very nice native. It doesn't belong in my yard. I can only grow it right next to the pond because it belongs in a rich, moist, even damp place. In fact, its common name is richweed for rich soil, and I've rescued it from where a whole bunch of ash trees fell down, and too much sun was going to kill it. And I didn't expect it to seed itself around, but it seeded itself around, so I have some that I have to find homes for now. Tell you, once you start thinking about trying to save a little bit of nature and keep things running, they start running you. All these pine trees that I'm tending and not pulling out because, well, I have to find a place to put them. Diane's found the viburnum leaf beetle larvae out and starting to eat. That'd be on your arrowwood. It's growing degree day 209. Yeah, I have not looked at what the growing degree days are yet this year. It's interesting to follow them and say, where are we right now? Because then you can guess which things are hatching out right now. Some things I don't want to know. It's nice to look and say, well, the locust is leafing out, so guess what? Locust plant bugs are leafing out. Viburnum leaf beetle, yeah, they would be coming out as the leaves come out, get all those nice, fresh, new leaves. But sometimes I just don't want to think too much about all of the things that are emerging out there and all the things that are living out there, as long as they don't cause too much trouble. And of course, that's all subjective. What's too much trouble? A couple of leaves eaten, a couple of plants eaten, could be a little bit of anything. Uh-oh. I used Ohio State's growing degree day chart and Michigan State's growing degree day chart in order to put the two together because each one had some things that the other one didn't have on it. Growing degree days, for those who might be listening and who might want to care about this, are they are accumulated heat over 50 degrees. So if I take um, a day when it's over 50 degrees for a couple of hours, and then I add that up, I start getting growing degree days. So it's been a degree over 50 steadily for X number of days. I accumulate 5-degree days, 10-degree days, 20-degree days, because insects develop when it's over 50 degrees Fahrenheit. Well, most insects could develop. Some of them develop a little cooler and some a little warmer, but we have a lot of information on several insects. Trying to remember Japanese beetle. Japanese beetle is one of the insects that when you hit the growing degree days, that I think it's in the hundreds, 900 or 1200. At when we have accumulated that much heat over 50 degrees, usually sometime in early June, all of the Japanese beetles that have hit that degree will come out at once, which is why we get such a huge flood of them. It might be that the neighbor's house where they've got lots of shade and maybe they're lower than we are and near a river. Maybe they're cooler, and so their Japanese beetles might hatch out tomorrow. But in general, they're all hatching out at the same time. Others hatch out over an extended period of time, and they're the ones that we have to go out and keep protecting leaves, protecting the new leaves as they come out, because there's a new batch of insects coming out. I can actually see insects swirling around my locust leaves out the window right now. And I can see birds hopping up and down the branches chasing them. Saw a song sparrow fly by yesterday carrying maybe a cabbage white, one of the small white butterflies, busily taking it off to someplace. Boxwood leaf miner damage, and can you hack? Yes, you can hack it all off right now. I haven't hacked mine down yet, but they were just doing that day before yesterday at the Chicago Botanic Garden. We were there to talk to Richard Hockey about his June presentation, that webinar that he's doing for us. And because we haven't been in a while together to the Chicago Botanic Garden, and we love seeing what they're doing over there. And there was a lot of pruning going on. A lot has already happened, but a lot was going on, and they were busy cutting up some boxwood. I will get to mine, I hope. I have 2 lilac bushes to dig out, and I have to finish getting the pond set up. I feel bad for the birds. Normally, by early April, I've got the pond running, so there's running water out there. They'll come to the pond but running water seems to attract them more. And I feel better about keeping running water clean than just water just sitting there. But this year has not been a year with a lot of days that are good for working in a pond. Not this spring. Totally getting to be. This squirrel is on the way to the entrance to the children's garden at the Morton Arboretum. He's quite a delightful guy. It's a good children's garden at the Morton Arboretum. I still think Green Bay Botanic Garden has the best one anywhere around. This is cool. I want to do this. Leaves, metal leaves as your fall and as the lip of your waterfall. This is our 40th Free4All Friday. Everybody's welcome. Come celebrate growing, cultivate problem solving. It is May 9th. You wouldn't know it from the fact that I was wearing long johns while I was working outside today, but it is May 9th. We're coming to you from gardenatozz.org. I'm Janet McConovich. Stephen Nicola is away today. Margaret Thiel is here with me, and I would have put a picture in if I'd had that figured out ahead of time. Stephen and I were in the Chicago area. This is at the Morton Arboretum this week, and at the Chicago Botanic Garden. And we are really glad to have you to talk to, because we exchange a lot of information that way. We hear about things going on. For instance, I don't have any of the viburnums that the leaf beetles seem to eat. Well, yes, I guess I do. The neighbor has a volunteer cranberry bush viburnum, so I should be looking at that for viburnum leaf beetle. But without other gardeners to say, here's what I'm seeing, it's kind of hard to keep up with that stuff. So I'm glad that you're here. And if you've got questions, you can put them in the chat anytime or raise your hand and we'll talk. On the website, we have hundreds, actually thousands of articles about all different kinds of things, most of which we wrote about because someone asked us to look it up, and we've learned a lot because they've asked us to look it up. So we take you along with us as we learn. Anybody can come. Just tell them to go to our Fridays page and click the link, and they can come on Friday, 7 to 8. Are there any questions right now? Well, hi, Amy. I haven't seen
No,
you.
I don't see anything. Is there a hand up?
I don't see any hands up. No, so we'll proceed. Aren't oaks wonderful? Look at the fall color. I mean, it's not a red leafed oak. It is a green leafed oak, right, that you're looking at right here. But it is leafing out with some of the colors that it's going to be showing in the fall, the colors that get masked by all the chlorophyll. And there's a lot of reds and purples in the springtime because they are protective against cold. So leaves come out kind of purplish color sometimes. I forgot to ask Sonia whether her Digiplexus made it through another winter. Digiplexus, a combination of digitalis foxglove and ampoplexol, another relative of foxglove, was supposed to be just a perennial, just an annual, what they call a temperennial. But it's been making it through the years and through the winters, even in Guelph, where my daughter Sonia lives. And it's pretty, it's a very pretty plant. This one was in pots at the Botanic Garden. It's a good time of year to wander around. I have to give myself permission to wander around. I always feel when I go outside that I must have a destination and an objective in mind. But you don't have to be doing something every hour, and you can get so much out of just walking around. Right now, our black Jack in the pulpit, which is a huge plant, is up in the one of the only kind of moist, cool areas that we've got in the recessed garden that I made in the front yard. It's so white inside. It's so vanilla white. It shines. And it's about, it's close to 2 feet tall. Just a magnificent plant. We only have the one, and it was hard to find, very hard to find. Cool plant, very cool plant. Jack in the pulpits are male. They produce pollen only until they get to a certain size. And then when they get large enough, then the flower can make berries. So if you see a Jack in the pulpit flower stalk laying on the ground with red berries red orange berries on it later in the summer, you've got a good sized Jack in the pulpit there. If you were to dig it up and move it, if you damage the bulb, it would revert to uh, pollen production only, and so it would change to a male, changing back and forth. A woke plant. We have a lot of bloodroot seeding themselves around. I don't know why, because bloodroot, I keep asking bloodroot what it's doing out there. What are you doing out in the sun? What are you doing mixing up? This one plant, the leaves are bigger than my hand. I've never seen such big leaves on bloodroot. Never. Great plant. At the Chicago Botanic Garden, we came across a ground cover, a native ground cover. This is big leaf aster. And we've admired it in the woods for many years and have a planting of it here at home. But we don't see very much of it. Stephen and I got into something of an argument over whether it was big leaf aster. I said, of course it's big leaf aster. What else could it be? So I had to take a picture of ours at home to compare it to theirs and say, see, it's the same serration on the edge of the leaf, the same venation, the same plant way it's growing. But we also noticed that ours is a little bit chlorotic. See the greener, darker green between the veins and lighter around the outside edge, which might have to do with the potassium deficiency in our soil, or it might have to do with the soil being too dry. But it's interesting to look and compare one plant to another and see if you can figure out why they're growing differently. So wander around and look. Someone asked whether they could plant Mertensia, Virginia bluebells, with wood poppy, Stylophorum, phylum, also called celandine poppy. And you got to watch out for that because there's another plant called celandine poppy that's a weedy thing. This is our native celandine poppy, native wood poppy, Stylophorum, back here, and the bluebells, and they bloom together real reliably. We started the bluebells in their own area, and we're letting them seed around. The seedlings are coming up all over. And we started the Stylophorum in its own area, and they're beginning to mix it up. Probably the Stylophorum will get to will be a majority, but the Virginia bluebells will never give up to it. It's a good plant to have. And it pays to look close because I had just told Steve that, well, I give up. I tried that other type of Bergenia ciliata, and It was fine there in January, looked good, but now it's gone. And then I looked under the Virginia bluebells and went, oh, nope, there it is, Virginia ciliata with its cilia, hairy edge on the leaf, ciliata coming up. This is a great big leafed Virginia, and we're anxious to see it grow. We saw it at Montreal Botanic Garden, I think. It was our first time that we'd seen this particular species of Bergenia and said, well, we got to have that. The leaves are dinner plate big and very impressive when they get going. It's just one little plant, but we'll see how it does. I showed you a while back that I was disappointed I hadn't cut back the epimedium before the new growth started coming up because it looked so brown. I said, oh, it's going to look awful. But I've also told you, and I tell myself on a regular basis, um, wait a little bit. Don't get so anxious. You don't have to clean everything up. Everybody always wants to clean everything up. There is 2 weeks and 3 weeks, and I didn't touch a single leaf of that epimedium. It's covered itself over. It's not a plant that has disease problems in the leaves, so it's not going to be a problem. You got to just sit back and wait sometimes. This is what I would like to see underneath that tree. And you may be able to tell even here that in the shade, the epimedium, this one is one of the ones that's got orange in its name. This is Epimedium flavum, the same species that I have growing there. But this one is one that was selected for some orange veination and orangey or yellow flower color and a little more leaf color. And the sun brings it out. It's got a reputation, Epimedium, or barren wort or bishop's cap. It's got a reputation as being for dry shade, and it's not. It doesn't prefer dry shade. It just tolerates dry shade better than some other things do, because this is an area that gets sun all morning long and then shade in the afternoon. I was interested to see that here they've got, this is at Chicago. I think it's at Chicago Botanic Garden. It might be at the Morton Arboretum, forgotten which one. They have Camassia planted with it, Indian Quamash, which gets very leafy, and I sometimes worry that it looks straggly. But I'm thinking that those blue flowers on the Camassia, blue-purple flowers above the orange foliage must look really neat when they bloom. It's a good reason to go back to a garden again. We showed you the Tartar tulips a couple weeks ago, and they were being shy about opening. They're beautiful plants. I love them. I'm not sure how much I'm going to like them when the pink blooming Geranium macrorhizum is blooming around them, but maybe they'll continue to bloom early and this bloom a little bit later. What a year for things blooming together. I've talked to any number of people who say their sinuses are just giving them heck this year. And with 2 months worth of plants blooming at the same time, crab apples normally are Mother's Day plants. They come into bloom and peak Mother's Day. They were early. Redbuds were late. Quince was late. The pines are still waiting for the pines to do their thing. Yews have just started going, and so it's been kind of late. This is Marybelle's uvularia. The uvula hangs down in the back of your throat. I think of it as a Disney cartoon thing. The character opens his mouth and you can look in and see this uvula hanging. So these people ask all the time on Marybelle's, they say, when is it going to bloom? But this is the bloom. And personally, we love it. We just think it's a great plant. It's one of those shade plants that takes its time to bulk up. This one started as 2 stems. Thank you, Shelley. I did get it back from Shelley where we put it in her garden. Started as 2 stems 3 years ago, and now it's up to what? 12, 14 stems. Enough that if I wanted to move some rocks around, I could divide it and move it around. Walking and looking, you just can never see everything at once. Our rug junipers are moving well. We started as just little rooted pieces from a rug juniper at my son's house, and it's now filling in quite nicely and spreading out. But I didn't notice this. Steve noticed this. See the line through here, through the pulsatilla, through our past flower? He was pointing out to me how things are. This is a deer path. They come right through here. I know they come and eat the campanula on the far side of this garden, but they must come through every night. I'm going to set up the trail cam. These are hoof prints. Hoof? Yeah, it's a hoof. for instance, but they must walk through there on a regular basis, and we'll see what Jennifer can put up with that. So I figure I'll get the trail cam and set it out on a bucket or something and see if we can catch them going through. So I've wondered how many there are. Any questions come into anybody's mind? Oh, there's a hand up. Michelle, that's you. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was, have you ever seen a variegated Mayflower? You know, those
Like a
things that have the,
mayapple?
yeah,
Um,
that's what I meant, a Mayapple, right. I saw
um,
one at Kelly's and it was $27
yes,
for one stem up
yeah.
and one big leaf.
I did see a variegated mayapple one time and thought, I wonder how s- steady, how stable that's going to be. I'd be interested to know. Did you get one?
Oh no, not for $27. And
Yeah,
besides,
interesting.
it was only, to me, it only looked modeled. It didn't really look much variation.
Right, right. People will
I've
take the
got some from the zoo. I'm not, that's good enough.
Did you know that mayapple is in the barberry family? I always learn something at the Botanic Gardens that have Linnaean gardens. There's one at Chicago Botanic Garden. There's one at Kew Gardens. I'm sure there are others. They're called Gardens of Order, and there's a whole bed, and the bed is planted with everything in the same family. So the pea family is here, the rose family is here, the mint family is here. And I'm walking by and I go, Barberry family. I would never have guessed based on the flower on the mayapple that it's in the barberry family, but it is.
Wow,
When
that is cool.
Yeah, people love blue, and if you buy a mix of windflower, anemone blanda, and I think the same thing happens if you buy anemone nemorosa, that's the European and the American woodland windflower. If you buy a mix of blue, purple, and white, the blues win out. You'll have a couple of whites, and then they just get nudged out of the way, and which is something because usually people are after blues, and with the anemones, you hear people saying, "Oh darn, too many blues." Um, I've been talking to people about weeds this week, talking to people as they weed, and talking to people who don't want to weed. Um, but I tell people if it's a good garden, there's going to be weeds. Nature does abhor a vacuum, and you give it a good place to grow, something's going to grow. I really love weeding. I could, if I only had all day, every day to just weed, I would just weed. There's a meditation. I talk to the plants as I'm working on it. No, you can't do this. No, you can't do that. But talking to other people as they weed is really a good thing to do. At the Chicago Botanic Garden and the Morton Arboretum, every place we saw somebody working, we were being pests, asking them questions. Chicago is still finishing cutting up, cutting back debris where they cut debris. They don't cut it everywhere. Um, but they've got most of their pruning done. The roses are cut. Steve is taking a picture of some chickweed. I said, "Is that Galansoga?" No, not Galansoga, but it's chickweed. The rose beds are full of chickweed. And I said, somebody's going to have to. I said, I wonder whether they're just planning on mulching over the top of that because they are mulching. I don't know what your mulch, have it delivered and dumped onto a tarp, but Stephen and I got into quite the row over this years ago. And I said, I'm going to do that because that's easier to clean up afterwards. You can just, and it might be easier to clean up afterwards and kind of move your mulch all along into one pile, less sweeping to do. But it is murder to scoop off of that. But at any rate, they do have a leaf compost mulch that they're using and putting on the gardens. And look, even at a botanical garden, people throw the mulch and then they have to blow off the plants or rinse off the plants and knock off the mulch that gets all over them. That I don't like. That always bugs me. I always tell people to put the mulch, don't throw the mulch. But when you're mulching acres and acres and acres, it's how it happens. And speaking of acres and acres and acres, we looked in one, this is adjacent to the Rose Garden at the Chicago Botanic Gardens. And I said, that looks to me like garlic mustard. And we looked over here and said, yeah, it's garlic mustard. So people ask, how do you get rid of garlic mustard? Well, you weed it out. Looks like this is the first year. It's a biennial. And then the second year it comes up to bloom, little white flowers on a stalk. And it does that. I mean, it fills an area. And how do you get rid of it? Oh, you sit down and you weed it out. This is at Chicago at the Botanic Garden. And you can see how thick it is in front of this gentleman right here. And you look at what they're doing is everybody's got a space from here to here. That's her area, that's his area, and get all of it out. It's no magic bullet for weeds. I was very impressed with these guys working on the hill because they were able to work both facing uphill and facing downhill. Currently, if I face downhill on even a little bit of a slope, I'm likely to go rolling down the hill. My balance has left me able to work only uphill. But these guys were turning around and working both ways and finding that they were better off with hand pulling than trying to hoe it. This woman is weeding. She's sitting on top of the box, the trimmed boxwood in the center of the bed, but she's got one of those kneeler seats where you can put it down on the ground and use it as a kneeling pad, or then pick it up and reverse it and use it as a little stool. She's placed the stool across the top of one of the boxwoods, and so she's sitting on the stool to weed that area. I had not thought of doing that. I have seen on parterre beds where they're planted very thickly with bedding plants and then sheared to spell the name of a company, or in the one case at the Niagara Falls Botanical Garden, they were doing their clock. They have a floral clock at the top of the hill. Must be the bottom of the hill because it's where the water's flowing to. But they had boards, planks set across and set on, so they'd put a support here and a support there and lay a plank across it, and so they could walk back and forth to shear the middle of the beds. So I'm always interested in how people manage to do things, and maybe you are too, maybe not. We were quite a ways away, and Steve said, "Do you think that's a quince?" I said, "There's nothing else that has the color like a quince does." And look, it's almost to the ends of the branches because it's allowed to grow to its full size. Where does it not make it to the end of the branches? It grows out here and is able to grab people as they walk by, because there's thorns on quince. So it is clipped over here. So it keeps growing out 1 year's growth, which is not going to be old enough ever to bloom, but every place else it's blooming out to the tips. I would love to have a nice quince, but they sucker and try to take over, and the thorns have tried their best to do me in. But I've watched orioles at the quince and hummingbirds at the quince. And who could turn down a rose like that? It is in the rose family, so you can call it a rose.
We have a question.
Uh-huh.
Barbara wants to know, she's got a friend in Arizona who wanted to attend but couldn't. She's planting a crepe myrtle tree and wants to know what pH it needs to be and how often it should be watered.
Wow. Depending on where you are in Arizona, that could be a good question. Barbara, does your friend have a sunny yard? Because when my parents were living in Arizona, anything that we planted there really needed to be on a drip irrigation. I mean, literally, it was trying to keep the soil moist all the time. And if it's out in the sun and she's in one of the warmer parts, she's not up in the mountains or something, then she's going to probably have to water it every day, at least for the first year. But I would tell her to put her hand in the soil, touch the soil underneath the mulch, and make sure you do mulch it. pH, I'd have to look that one up. It seems to me that they're like crab apples. They like it just a little bit toward the alkaline side. But I'm not sure that you're going to be able to do that alteration of the pH unless you start with a soil test. So I would tell her, don't worry about it. If there are crepe myrtles blooming, growing anywhere in the area, chances are good that they will accept soil at its natural range that's in your area. If she's not seen any crepe myrtles growing anywhere, and I can't remember seeing crepe myrtles in the Southwest. They're everywhere in the South and the Central East. I saw them all over in California. Oh, shoot. There was a crepe myrtle growing at my sister's place in California, and we did a soil test there, and her pH was 7.8. So they either tolerate alkaline or they're okay in alkaline, and it's unlikely that you're going to have a severely acid soil there. So give it a shot the way that it is and feel the soil to see what it needs. Have her email us. We're a little behind on emails. We were traveling this week, so I didn't catch up with what was going on. Let's go back to prepared statements here. I was weeding out by the road. Right next to the road, I try to keep things from flopping over into the road, and we try to keep things real short. And this is our patch of native pussy's toes that started as one plant 5 years ago, and we're letting it proceed out into other areas. It's coming up to bloom right now. We're beginning to see a little bit of damage, so there's some caterpillars in there from the American lady butterfly. And I had to get a different picture from a slightly different time to show you what was going on. I normally have to wear gloves. I just can't work without gloves. Once back when I first started gardening, I couldn't work with gloves. But then my skin began to get sensitive to soil and will crack and peel if I'm in the soil for any length of time. So I have to wear gloves, but I'm weeding this stuff, which is very low to the ground and very dense. And where it has expanded, where it's moving out, which is what we want it to do and cover things up, it's getting mixed up with some tough weeds. If you look close, you can see two different weeds there. There's creeping speedwell here and some seedlings further out. And that's one that roots, puts a stem out and then can wrap over the top of something and root. So you have to get all of the rooted connections out. And also these are the seed heads of bittercress, which I don't really want to have seeding in there. I'd rather have as pure a stand of pussy toes as we can. So I was weeding without gloves, without my fingers in gloves, so that I could feel the stems, because feeling the stems tells me what I'm pulling, whether I'm pulling the rather furry, woolly stem of a pussy's toes, or whether I'm pulling the more wiry stem of this or the rooted stem of the speedwell. So I was out there working without gloves on. And the neighbor, who I've come to treasure, she's new last year, and we're having a good time together, has been out digging dandelions. She is determined to make her lawn look better, but she wants to do it all organically, so she's been digging dandelions. Well, you might be able to see the line here where our garden, and then we kept some lawn on this side of the garden so that there's a place for me to legitimately wheel my wheelbarrow and throw my stuff and work. So I'm working there, and she's diligently digging dandelions and saving them for Thomas the tortoise, who lives in about 15 houses away and loves to eat dandelions, and showing me what she's got. And I thought, and here I am looking at my part of the lawn, which has got dandelions all over in it. But, well, I'm not going to weed my lawn proper, the one on the central part of the yard, but I'm going to take the dandelions out of here. I take dandelions out with a fork. I put a fork in next to the dandelion, lean back. This week, the ground was quite moist, so I could loosen deep. And most of the dandelions I pulled out, I got a foot of root or so. Not all of it. That broke off. Give it a few weeks, it might be back up again. This one, I probably got all of it or enough of it that it's not going to come back. And I dug dandelions until I started breaking them off because my fingers were running out of energy. And I was wearing, these are fingerless gloves that Sonia knitted for me. And I'm sure that she would say, "Good, Mom, I'm glad you're using them." But I think in the back of her mind, she would think, but I didn't knit them so that you could rub around in the dirt with them. And that made me think, how do people clean their hands? Back when I didn't wear gloves, I used to get in trouble for my hands being totally stained, no matter what I did with them. Sometimes I had to use lemon juice to try to get them clean again. Um, but they do peel and crack. It can get painful, so I don't do this very often anymore. I just wondered how everybody cleans. This was about 10 minutes later. I have, I don't know where it came from. I used to have a knuckle brush that was one that you put your fingers through in one hand, like what are those called? Brass knuckles. But I really like how this one works better than a using an old toothbrush. And I don't know how people who don't have bar soap anymore, my grandkids don't even know what bar soap is. They think it's quite the novelty because everyone has a pump sprayer. So how do you guys clean your hands? Does anybody have any secrets that they want to give to somebody else on how to make your hands presentable for polite company? Yeah, Karen's leaving the dandelions for the bees. Like I said, the yard proper is full of them, and I feel kind of okay leaving those there because Nancy is weeding hers out. There's our 30-foot bed between us that will probably catch most of the seeds that would otherwise blow into her yard. No suggestions for how to get your hands clean? It did occur to me while I was cleaning my hands, got a text from April, who has been working on her lawn too. And I've dug the dandelions out of this area here. And once I've dug the dandelions out, I've also aerated that place really well. Put in the fork, lean back, put in the fork, lean back, put in the fork, lean back. And I had told April that she could use a fork to aerate her lawn. So she called and she said, well, I said, well, I use a garden fork. I said, I have an extra one that hasn't been used in forever because it's a little fork and it's not my favorite fork. So Steve dropped a fork off at her house to aerate. She was going to buy those shoes. She said, I was going to buy those shoes that have spikes on them. They don't work. The spikes actually compress the soil on the edges of where they make a hole, as opposed to an aerating machine that pulls a core out. It pulls out a little sausage of soil and leaves the air, that sausage uh, cylinder of soil that it pulls out, dries out and crumbles and goes back in a looser fashion. But the shoes just compress the hole that they make. With a fork, when you put it in and then lean back on the handle, you're actually you're breaking the compaction. Yeah, you're breaking the soil up with the tines of the fork. And it's easier to get a fork in the ground than it is to get a shovel in the ground. People complain about their soil. This is at the Chicago Botanic Garden. Chicago Botanic Garden is located in what used to be the Skokie Swamp. No, it still is a Skokie Swamp. What they did was dredged out areas and took the soil from what they had dredged out and made islands and bigger shores. And that's where the gardens are with lakes and ponds between them. But the soil itself is very heavy clay loam. And when you look at that, you might think, oh, that's terrible, but they can grow. Look at these primulas, Sonia. Sonia was offering me primulas the other day. Look at these primulas. I wish I could grow primulas like that, but when you've got soil that retains water and stays moist even on hot days, as long as you can break it up some, isn't that a gorgeous planting? And that's the kind of thing that Rodgersia needs too. Rodgersia wants to grow in a place with a soil that's a heavy soil, got lots of moisture retention ability. Nancy soaks her fingers in water and then a toothbrush.
There's also been a suggestion to, before you go out gardening, drag your fingers across a bar of soap to get soap under the nails.
Oh, that's interesting. So you've filled it with soap before it can get filled with dirt. It's probably what are they called? What they call liquid gloves, the stuff that you could use to protect yourself from poison ivy. I wonder if that would make a difference too. I've tried using very thin gloves, like surgical gloves, but I still can't feel the difference like I want to do. Speaking of Nancy, Nancy, did your dicentrin, did your bleeding hearts show up yet? Bernadette says it assumes that one has nails. Yeah, we don't. I keep mine cut pretty short. I always look at people with nails. Do you know that there are gloves for people with nails? It took me a while to understand that that's what the long designation meant on women's gloves. Medium long. I said, what's medium long? It's for long nails. They give you more room for your nails in the gloves. Go ahead, Nancy.
I do see a little bit of something growing, but it's not anywhere the size it used to be. So, and then the golden heart, it's not back. There's nothing.
Nothing there.
So, no.
You might have to run out and get another one because I that's a plant, gold heart, bleeding heart, that when someone described it to me, they said, well, there's a bleeding heart with gold foliage. I thought, who would want a gold foliage?
Oh, it is
And
so
then I saw it.
cool.
Yeah, they're gorgeous. So if you lost it, if it's gone, gotta go get
Yeah.
another one.
Yep. Time to get another one.
Yeah. Well, it's a cool leaf. It's false hydrangea, Diananthe. I've tried to grow Diananthe cerulean with a blue flower in the summertime in the shade. It's another plant that, like Rudgersia, needs to have a moist, rich soil, which doesn't describe the soil I have in my garden. Um, this is a Diananthe bifida, or leaf split in two. And they're called false hydrangea because the flowers are kind of arranged a little bit like a mop head hydrangea in the summertime. And this one's a little more tolerant of dry soils. Diananthe. It's a good name. I think it means godly flower. Diananthe. Lily leaf beetle report. The season's over in our garden. It started when we saw the first lily leaf beetles when the lilacs were just showing bud color. And then we started seeing damage on the leaves of lily. This is on Fritillaria. Fritillaria imperialis, the crown imperial, orange lily relative. And shortly after, then you start seeing eggs. So we told you about how we went out daily and found them, went looking for the beetles and squashing them, and have far fewer of them this year than last year, and decided with that what we did last year must have made a difference, and we would do the same thing again. So now they're done blooming. So they looked like this a week ago. Now the flowers are dried up. Seed pods are forming. I don't care if they don't seed themselves around. In fact, I'd rather that they didn't get crazy. So I'm cutting them off as far down as I can cut them. See, there's white at the bottom. Um, I think I found about 5 more lily leaf beetles as I cut, and I squashed them. But the idea is to deny them any food. There can't be another generation if there's nothing to eat. We don't have any other fritillarias in the yard. This is Fritillaria persica. If we did, we'd be doing the same thing and cutting it down when it's done. But they also live on regular lilies, oriental lilies, Michigan lilies, all of those true lily bulb plants. We're not growing any of those. If we did, we'd have to do what our friend David does, which is continue to kill leaf beetles all year long. But we cut these off. I cut these clumps of fritillaria all the way off last year, and they came back this year just fine and bloomed just fine. And you can see I'm cutting them off when they're still green. So that whole bit about you have to let a bulb plant go yellow is not accurate without explanation. If you want the clump to multiply greatly, then yeah, you're going to let it stay in the sun every day. It can stay in the sun. But I've got enough. That's enough of a show. We're happy with that. I don't need them to bulk up any more than that. And I don't want to chase lily leaf beetle any longer. So we're just going to make it that they don't have anything to eat. Biological control. Actually, I think that's called cultural control.
Got a question.
Uh-huh.
Do arborvitae prevent lilacs from growing? Removed several years ago. 3 lilac twigs are still lilac twigs. Full sun, protected from wicked wind.
I don't know that arborvitae have any allelopathic tendencies that they don't create any chemicals that kill other things, but they are very tough to grow against. I've been told by a number of English gardeners who use arborvitae as a hedge, and certainly Pat Hotz up at Lavender Lane Farm in northern Michigan said never again would she plant arborvitae because they're so greedy. It's so hard to keep them watered and keep a garden watered too. But you're saying you took them out, so it shouldn't there shouldn't be any residual there. Why would the lilac twigs still be lilac twigs? Um, could just be that the soil is very dry. You need to know a little bit more about the location. Yeah, it could be that the soil is just very dry there. But lilacs should, third year, what's a wet area? Well, lilacs are not known for liking to be in the wet. Um, they are great prairie plants. I know in Minnesota they did a study of which hedge plants were best for cutting the wind that comes screaming across the plains there and so cold. And lilacs were hands down the winners, even over native plants for being able to handle growing in the drier soil. But I don't know lilacs as a wet plant, so maybe the moisture in the area is holding them back. Try clethra instead. You started with just a little clethra, um, and I mean just a little one. Just you can order it by mail, or maybe you can find somebody who's got a clethra summer sweet and it's suckering already, and just take a sucker and put it in. And if it takes off, then you say, okay, I'm just going to grow a wet plant here that has a nice fragrance and a nice flower. They bloom in the summer, clethra. Summer sweet blooms usually in late July, early August. Kind of depends on how you handle the plant, pruning the plant. Greg's got a question, or maybe he's got a suggestion for you. Want to chime in, Greg?
Yeah, this is a follow-up on a question that I asked last Saturday about the crab apple versus the cherry disease
Ah, yes.
problem.
Yes.
And it's been established that the tree died over several years. It declined over several years. So I'm going to run with the idea that it was some sort of disease that took it out. And looking for a replacement, I'm wondering if something like a Kim lilac on a standard would be okay, or is that going to be susceptible to the same sort of diseases?
Diseases that would gradually kill a cherry family plant, a rose family plant like a cherry, would be like a canker or a fungus that gets into wounds in the wood. If you went with a lilac or something in the lilac family, Miss Kim lilac or a different lilac on standard, you're moving to a different family, and that should make a big difference.
Okay.
Yeah, most diseases are pretty specific to either a genus or to a family. So if you move out of the family, you're in good shape. There are very few plants that are as spectacular as a cherry in bloom, though. Um, Silver bell might do, especially if you're looking for spring bloom. Um, and to stay in that color group, there is we just saw, and I think that I even have a picture of it. There's a red bud called Morton that the Morton Arboretum developed. That's kind of a broad spreading weeping. It's a very nice red bud. So you could go with red bud. That's in a different family too. Yep, always a good idea to stay out of the family if you think that there was a disease going on.
Just a follow-up on I went after about a dozen lily beetles this morning, working out there. So they're still there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. They'll be there all year. They're generally 2 or 3 generations, and by the middle of summer, there's so many of them that they're just hanging off the leaves. The larvae are just disgusting little slug-like things that keep their own excrement all over them. Yeah. Good luck with keeping up with them. If you can just stay ahead of the adults and not have too many eggs, you're in great shape. Who's this? We've got the Baltimore Orioles with grape jelly.
Karen Harrison has a question.
Okay, Karen, go ahead.
Let's see what her question is here. She says the rabbits ate her, ate the cambium on the client's burning bushes really bad. Do I need to cut them way down where they're not eaten? They're
Yep, you
8
need to,
feet high and won't
you need to let those bushes
cut.
come back from good sound wood that's complete. We have an article on the website that's got pictures of Mary Wenty Lindsay and myself standing on snowshoes, cutting down, 6-foot burning bushes that right down to stubs. They grew back just fine, as long as they don't get eaten again as they come back up again. But you can't rely on the wood above the girdled, the chewed place. You can't rely on that wood above the chewed place. It's going to be weak wood. I'm looking at Barb's note about Baltimore Orioles, though, and they have been to her feeder and eating grape jelly, and there are battles between them and robins. We have, let's see, coming to the grape jelly, there are the orioles, the purple finches, the hummingbird has been there on a regular basis. The robin will come there. Steve's told me which ones. We've had red-winged blackbirds there, so I think there are a number of birds that can get hooked on sugar, and basically that's what's going on with the grape jelly. I don't know about the oranges, whether anybody else is fighting with the oranges, but robins are big fruit eaters. They'll pluck all the crab apples off of your crab tree. They're fruit and insect eaters more than seed eaters. Robins are. There's a great book called Animals and Their Wildlife and Their Food Habits. It's a USDA publication that was published by, oh dear, I'd have to go around my bookshelf to get it to see. But it goes bird by bird and animal by animal through and shows you what their food preferences are in the growing season and out of the growing season. And it's pretty fascinating when you look and see how many birds switch to insects for a period of time, and how many will live on seeds and how many have to have fruit and insects rather than seeds.
Bernadette's got a question. She's got a lilac that a buck is destroying. It's a stunning heirloom lilac that the buck is destroying. What's the best way to start a new one? I would start with a pot and consider another area of the garden.
Well, you can take a cutting and root it, or you can bend a branch down and injure the bottom of if you got a lax branch, injure one side of the branch, scrape it, and then put that in contact with the soil and peg it down so that it can root through the summer. Then you can clip that loose and layer it and have one to move someplace else. But you're probably going to have to protect the whole area, because if you've got a buck rubbing on a lilac, he's stomping around the outside too, and their hooves would get to a layer. It's not a good time to make a cutting from a lilac right now. The best time to take cuttings from lilacs is when the wood is starting to get firm. We're talking about July, when you can bend the new branches and they snap rather than just bend. And then you could start a cutting from it. But I'd probably dig it up and take the whole thing away. I don't know what, you give them a totem pole or something to beat up. Stupid bucks.
Let's see, there's a couple other questions. My neighbor is planting low shrubs to attract birds, and black currant was suggested, but can they be planted in Oakland County? Someone told her they're not permitted because of the
Ryebees is supposed to, because of the agricultural problem, it's an alternate host of wheat rust. I think it's wheat rust. I don't know that anybody enforces that, but we had put gooseberry is also on that list. And we bought gooseberry and put into a client's garden because he wanted gooseberry. It reminded him of something when he was little. If you're not next to a farm, you're probably not going to be in trouble. But I don't know I've never grown black currant, so I don't know if it's a ryebees and if it's on that list. Let's see, what could we find out? Well, right now I can't find out. It's too bad I don't have a longer arm. I could reach over to the books and get it out and see if blackcurrant is a ryebees, because they are on the list, but doesn't mean that they're a problem if you're in a suburb or if you're in a city. It would be a problem if a farmer was growing wheat and saw that he had rust, and they would identify where the alternate host was, and they'd make you rip them out. It's saying this is against the law.
Let's see. Judy's got a question. During your presentation at Wiegand's, you mentioned a peony that remained short, so it did not need staking. What is the name of it, and where can I find it?
I don't know the name of it. I think I was talking at Wiegand's about the fact that we have a number of peonies that have come from various places, clients' gardens, friends' gardens. I think there are probably 12 different peonies out there. And I had Steve take pictures last year because I kept forgetting which one it was that I was always flopping over. Um, your best bet for peonies that stand up are going to be the intersectional peonies, the peonies that are a cross between the tree peony and the Memorial Day peony, that's the standard peonies. Um, there used to be just a few of them, but once they figured out breeders in the Soviet Union and breeders in the US were working at about the same time, they found a way to keep the pollen from the tree peonies viable and cross-pollinate with the other peonies. And they're great woody stems. So go with the intersectional peonies, and that's what they're called, intersectional peonies, hybrids between tree peonies and Memorial Day peonies. I have one called Bartzella with yellow flowers that I love. Um, but I also have one called Appearance. First Appearance. Um, and there are, I would direct you to Clem's catalog, except Clem's stopped growing. Oh dear, where is a good place to get peonies now? I know there's one called Peony Envy, a catalog, and she grows a lot of the different ones, but I haven't ordered from there. I've just enjoyed the catalog. So
Would a fernleaf peony fit the bill?
it would, although
It's
they're
not.
they're quite small. I mean, they're quite small. A fernleaf peony is small and so early that a lot of people don't even realize that it's a peony, and they go dormant, they go away. So take a look at fernleaf peony too. That's Peony tenuifolia, and see whether or not you like that look. It's a beautiful plant. I showed a picture of one last spring that a neighbor has that I'm envious of because it takes time for them to get to any kind of size, like any peony. But I think I'd go for the intersectional peonies, Julie. Intersectional. Um, I'm, it's what they call them.
Bernadette still has some questions on the lilac. Some old wood was cut out, and it does have new growth. Digging up even part of the lilac cannot happen due to extensive tree roots and severe erosion. Would cutting remaining old wood out help get good softwood to try rooting?
Yeah, I think if you what they call stool a shrub so that you get new shoots, you're going to have more wood to work with. Um, so you could cut back a couple of old canes now and watch for something to come up, but it smashed up against a large maple, against the trunk of a maple. Um, that's not a great place to ask a plant to grow and would be shaded for at least part of the day. So I'm not sure what kind of suckers you're going to get from that.
It's got suckers. It's one of those cases I think the tree wasn't there when she moved in, and the lilac just happened to get swallowed up by this giant maple tree, and I believe we have a sinkhole, so there's a lot of erosion in the area. It's just a gorgeous lilac. I haven't seen one like it, and it's an old bush, and there's another one that's across the road, and it has to be 20 feet across or so. Just a big round ball of flowers in the spring. Even down here, I could smell it.
Yeah, they are beautiful plants. I went and collected lilacs for my sister from her neighborhood. I just knocked on doors and I said, "You've got a lilac out there that's got plenty of suckers. Can I dig one of the suckers out?" Because that's the best way to get another lilac is to take a sucker. And even jammed up against a maple, you should be able to rinse away the soil around one of the suckers if it's got suckers, and trace that sucker back far enough that you've got the start of roots on it. And then you just put it in a pot and grow it, watching it carefully to make sure that it doesn't dry out. And you've got another plant there.
It's, when you do that, you and you find the roots and stuff. Do you cut it then, or should it be waiting for a while and just let it
If it's a sucker and got some roots started on it, go ahead and cut it. So I'm washing this. I have the main plant and I've got a sucker coming up over off to one side. I'm going to rinse off between the main plant and the sucker as far back as I can and look to see if there's any roots, and then use a saw to saw between the sucker and the shrub and take whatever roots or beginnings of roots that it's got and start that as a new plant.
because this year it had one flower. It used to have several, but it's struggling against that maple and stuff and the erosion, obviously. And now the gentleman across the way from me has a lilac, and every time he has a gardening question, he's like, "Hey," and he's like, "I have this problem." I said, "Powdery mildew," and then he's like, "What is this?" And I said, "That's a buck who's now found your lilac to kill."
Yeah,
So,
they like springy wood to beat up. Although I have seen them beat up really big diameter trees too. Good luck. Good luck.
thanks.
Yep.
Oh,
Nancy,
it's well, one
Nancy,
more question with lilacs. Is there a way to cut them so they last longer than like 1 or 2 days?
yes. When you cut the lilacs, don't take any leaves on that stem. If you want leaves in your arrangement, take a separate branch with leaves on it. Take all the leaves off of the stem. Peel the bottom of the stem so that it's not got bark where it's in the water, and then soak it all the way up to the top of the lilac flower overnight when you first cut it. Doesn't really matter temperature of the water, but you need to force water off the stem to start with. And they'll last for a long time if you do that.
Yeah, 'cause I usually want to get them to last like a couple of days, and
If you get leaves with them, the flower the leaves are going to take the water. That's just the way that it's going to work.
yeah. Usually I take the leaves off, but maybe the stripping of the bark and letting it soak would help.
Oh
What
yeah, it does. Does
does
because
alum help?
does what elm help? What?
Alum.
I have no idea. I've
It's
never.
a pickling spice that you like. Sometimes if you have like
I
hydrangeas, you
have
can.
I have no idea though whether that makes any difference. So I can't tell you. I've never heard of putting that in there. I've heard of aspirin, putting a copper penny in to keep bacteria
Well,
out.
well,
Uh,
you just put it on the ends, and somehow it's supposed to keep them fresher. It was more for floral ranging. I was just wondering.
well, you'll have to try it and let us know.
Okay.
Do a scientific test. Do
I'll
5 bunches with alum and 5 without.
have to go down to the big bush and take a few branches off.
Let's get
Thanks.
a different picture to look at. Steve would be telling me to change the picture, Janet. I can't have people looking at the same picture over and over again. Um, I'm in a position with our wildlife garden of realizing that we're not the ones that are out there 24/7. This little guy, I love watching them and finding out the things that they do and why they do them. You know, the red-winged blackbirds move a feather in their wing to hide the red if they're out of their own territory, a male. They don't want to irritate the male that belongs in that area. And our feeders appear to be a place where 4 different red-winged blackbird males meet, and 3 of them keep their wing covered. It's just kind of neat. They also yell at me. If I spend too much time in there, they start yelling at me.
They attack
Barn,
vultures.
barn swallows.
They'll go after the vultures.
Hang in there, Bernadette. Yep, they do. So do the crows and the jays. Um, this is what I've been telling you about not cutting things down, leaving some stuff wild. Um, Prairie dropseed, the old grass still there. Stems on the penstemon and stems on the swamp milkweed still standing up. But people worry about the plants aren't going to be able to come through. The plants can come through. This is shooting star in the prairie. It's just a little thing. The flower stands up maybe 12 or 18 inches high, but the leaves are low on the ground and it's surrounded by prairie plants. You can see how tall these stalks are going to be. It's still just fine. You have to give the plants the chance to do and grow on their own. Um, Woodland phlox divaricata. It's growing right up through where there's fall sunflowers. The woodland sunflowers grow up through it. Afterwards, doesn't bother the woodland phlox at all. I'm very impressed with woodland phlox. It's holding its own against the brunnera in our ground cover area. And I thought it was going to get all eaten by the rabbits and the groundhogs, but so far it seems to be keeping its own. So when I dug up a couple weeks ago, showed you digging up yarrow so that I could split it up. I'm not going to cut that back. I'm going to leave that stuff to grow because that's out in our prairie area, in our wild area, and that's for the animals. And I know that that stuff right there is precious to the birds. They're using all that debris. You know, a robin goes by and goes, "Oh, look at that. I'm going to take that with me." So I was working out, cutting the stems that were laying from our garden out onto the road. I cut those stems back because I don't want people rolling over them or complaining that I'm blocking the road. And I was edging the garden to keep the clover from getting too far crazy. And I got to here and said, you know, I think I'm going to cut a couple of these stems that are over the path so that I can get my shovel in there to work. And I was working for just a few minutes when I began to hear a sound that I realized I'd heard before and realized it was the meadowlark. And she'd flown up into the tree next to me and was complaining. I said, "Oh, I've heard that noise before. I'm not sure whether her nest is right in here or whether it's back underneath the pine, but I think we have a bird nesting in there and it becomes um, hard to deal with because it's not all my garden anymore. Everything's a decision. It's kind of fun to do. Do you know about Merlin? I know some people that I've talked to have been using this program. It's Cornell University's bird identification program. And it's a wonderful thing. You can download the app for free and click on Identify. It's one of your main menu items. And then you can press the button to identify and just point your phone out, and it will tell you what bird you're listening to. It'll tell you 4 or 5 birds that you're listening to. It's very impressive. But I looked at that and I played that's our meadowlark lady. Actually, this is probably a male. He's got a yellow throat, and the females don't have a yellow throat. Um, but I played the song to her. I listened to what Cornell had already recorded of the different calls for meadowlark. And because people can, and you can also input calls. So you can record a call and say, here's what it is. So I was playing calls back to her. And we've done the same thing with the wren and had the wren answer us, which is really kind of cool to do. The program's called Merlin, and it's a free app from Cornell University, all about birds ornithology lab.
Got about 2 minutes left till 8.
Okay. So we will go past pretty plants. Steve and I are trying to figure out what this one is. We didn't know that there was a variegated hydrangea, and we think that it's a schizophragma, maybe the false hydrangea, climbing hydrangea. Pretty plant. I highly recommend going to botanical gardens that plant a lot of things because they cut a lot of things. This is what's going on at Chicago Botanic Garden, cutting back boxwood hard. They do have their boxwood problems there. And they do a lot of artistic pruning. This was at the Morton Arboretum. This is the redbud called Morton. But you're looking at an S espalier off the wall at Chicago in the vegetable garden area. These trees are not falling over. That's called a cordon. They're planted at an angle because that promotes more flowering branches along the trunk and grow them as a cordon. These are candelabra espaliers. They're freestanding. There are wires like on a grapevine trellis going down here that help support them while they're young. But once they're this age, they are freestanding and easier to pick fruit all along the way. Look at the trunk size on these apples. Gorgeous or what? Almost a Dr. Seuss tree. Those are at Chicago Botanic Garden. This is also Chicago in the Japanese garden. We've been watching these cloud pines. They're called cloud pines because this is the cloud. And most of them are pines, red pines of one kind or another. Their trunks have gotten much bigger, but they're keeping the clouds the same size. They were working on them when we were there this week. There's your orchard ladder. It's all done by hand. Takes a lot of time. And it's fun to talk to them about what they're doing because they can stand there and do it and talk. Orchard ladders are wonderful with that free leg that you can maneuver into different places on hills or into the middle of a shrub to hold yourself up. We were very glad to have an orchard ladder. And it's fun to watch and say, so these are witch hazels, and see somebody has made them shorter by cutting them off to a side branch. in many of this is in the landscape section at Chicago Botanic Garden where they're showing you different things you can do in your own landscape. And people don't have room to grow everything they want to full size, so they're kind of demonstrating for you how you can keep things smaller. Personally, I like witch hazel allowed to grow. But a lot of artistic, a lot of years go into this artistic deciding which of the weeping branches on the larch to keep. There's no set rules for it. And even at botanical gardens, this is a hydrangea serrata, one of the lace cap hydrangeas. And they bloom on old wood, so you can see that all the tip buds got killed back. These are just going to be green this year. Happens to them too. This is a blue one called Blue Billow, and it actually is alive to the tips. Although it looks a little bit chlorotic, I'm not sure how big the flowers are going to be, but Blue Billow is one that you might want to try because Chicago's in the same zone that we are in Southeast Michigan. Cutting back the roses, we cut them back hard. Makes you feel better that you're not the only one chopping things back hard. Button bush, I learned with button bush that I just whack it right to the ground like a butterfly bush. Whoop, sorry. Because it's going to smell wonderful walking along that hedge, but you don't want them to be 8 feet tall and 8 feet wide and hanging out over the walkway. So they cut them back hard. Bayberry. Bayberry is great for the scent of the leaves. You don't really care whether it blooms or not. It's for the scent of the leaves as they grow up. So they're cut back hard. Smoke bush, cut back for more colorful foliage and to keep it small like a hedge. Bald cypress around the Linnaean Garden in Chicago. We've watched these for years. Steve showed you Longwood Gardens doing their linden trees this way. But it's all done by hand. Stand on a platform and clip, 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 clip all of the little pieces and always keeping them at the same level. Pruned once a year. You can see the structure of the basswood linden tree cut that same way, where they've just stopped the branches from going up above that point. There's a great place near the education center at the Chicago Botanic Garden, near the Regenstein Center, with all these beautiful white birches, and growing underneath them are hydrangeas, which have been cut back to nearly nothing. So hydrangea arborescens, the snowball hydrangeas. And there are also hydrangeas all through here, all through the ferns, and even back over to here. And these hydrangeas out where there's more light and where the ground cover is vinca, myrtle, are doing much better than the hydrangeas back here. So the more shade you give them, and then they're competing with English ivy as well. So you can go and look and see how things work. Wisteria, this is our native, this is Wisteria floribunda. This is the North American native wisteria. Most people grow the Asian wisteria, but they both do the same thing. They bloom on older wood. So you can see they've been cutting off through the sharp cut, leaving just the flowering stubs so that they get lots of bloom and not too many of these branches. See this branch right there? That's not going to have any bloom on it. It's just going to have leaves and they'll obscure the flowers. And you can see things you would not want to do. We're standing on the observation platform at the Morton Arboretum's maze, which is a wonderful maze, beautiful maze. Can spend a lot of time in there. But imagine being the person that has to do all that cutting. You can feel good about yourself. I don't have to do that. And you can commiserate and say, that happened to me too. It's the shrub in the middle that tends to die. We were talking to Irina about this, about her Rosa Sharon hedge. Don't plant between them. They need room to root. It's always going to be the one in the middle that's competing the worst, that's going to get lost and not make it grow as well as the others will.
We've got a couple of questions before it gets too late. It's
Okay.
7 after 8.
Oh, okay. Well, let's go with the questions then, and we'll do this later.
Right. Let's see. How do you get rid of weeds and patio cracks?
Well, if they're little weeds and you're getting them when they're seedlings, you can pour boiling water on them. You take your teapot out and every day circle another stone with boiling water, but that's only going to work on seedlings. If they're already established, you're going to have to either use a herbicide I don't do that. I dig them out. And if they're deep rooted, they're crevice growing plants, you're probably going to have to root them out several times to get them out. You can use a pre-emergent if they're getting in as seed, you can use a pre-emergent, but that's also a herbicide, and I stay away from herbicides, so I can only tell you about what I do. But the hot water works. Just boil up a kettle and every day go around one more stone.
Karen has a question, or Diane rather. Is now the time to decrease the number of stems of garden phlox? How
Yes.
many should we leave?
When I'm thinning garden phlox, if I've got a clump the size of a dinner plate, I'm going to leave it 6 or 7 stems is all. And everything else I'm just going to pinch out, or I'm going to divide it so that I can place 6 or 7 together in a dinner plate area. But I need lots of air to be able to move through the stems. So 6 or 7 is plenty. You don't have to do it. They don't at the evaluation center at Chicago. They evaluate them based on how they grow by themselves. They don't go thinning and deadheading and any of that kind of stuff. Any more?
I think that's all our questions.
Okay. Well, I had promised some people that I was going to finish up our Easy on the Environment free webinar tonight, but I guess I'll save that for next week because I overloaded what's going on. What a shame. These espaliers that Morton are going into the Maze area are great. Purple peaches trained over the top. Over the top gardens. That's what garden centers are, botanical gardens are. Well, thank you for being with us. I will get to the emails that came there. A couple came yesterday, Diane, Cindy, Christine, and Elizabeth. I'll get to those emails and catch up because we won't be traveling next week. And we'll be back next week. Let's see. Got to get to a place where I can find the end. There we go. We end here. All right, we're at the Waterford Library next Wednesday. It's free. You can just come at 4 o'clock and garden with us or watch us garden. Or you can come at 7 o'clock. We're doing a design lesson. That's May 14th at the Waterford Township Library in Michigan. Everybody's welcome. They're great gardens, and we're working a lot on design because we had to dig most of them out and change everything around. We'll be back with another Free for All Friday. Steve will be here with me for number 41 next Friday. That's May 16th. And if you get a chance, sign up for our webinars because our next webinar is with the professor in charge of the trial area at Chicago Botanic Garden, Richard Hawkey, who's going to talk to us about how you know what a good garden plant is. And he is wonderful. He's 40 years of trying plants for the Midwest. What will grow, what won't grow, why it's good, why it's not, why you might not want to grow that. He's a wonderful guy.